front office perhaps in some sort of different roles, but Gase would be able to hang on. But I think the last few weeks things went sour, and now Adam Gase becomes a head coaching candidate. All we hear about is, I want the young offensive guy, the young offensive guy. Well, Adam Gase is in his early 40s and he's an offensive guy. Is that the one that it is? And you know, do you want to give fresh new faces a look, or do you want to go Gase? I'm very interested to see where he ends up.
Did Gase deserve better than a banged-up Ryan Tannehill?
Maybe that's it. Maybe Gase deserved a Lamar Jackson or something else as opposed to...
How about a Baker? How would his personality match with Baker and Greg if Greg stays?
With that said, though, and I agree with you guys, what about when you make moves and your moves don't work? What about when you get rid of Jay Ajayi, Ndamukong Suh, and you're
Jarvis Landry,
and these are cornerstones to your squad, and the results are what people expected. So I think there's two sides to the coin. You sit back and you say, well, Gase wasn't working with top-tier talent all across the board. Then other people say, well, he shipped away top-tier talent as well. So I see both sides of it. I'm a big Gase fan. I was able to sit down with him a few years ago in Santa Clara as a conversation I'll never forget.
He's got some edge, does he not?
He had me so pumped up, I was ready to put the pads on. And I had never had that feeling talking to a coach. So I know he's going to land somewhere, and he's going to be very successful wherever he goes.
We've got a shrine back there to the Eagles. Eagles face the Bears in Soldier Field. Let's talk playoffs. You got more on the coaching after this. But Philly, Mike Garafolo is there giving us the early report on what's going on. Nick Foles left this game. It's a big one. On the road, he's 9-2 the past 2 seasons. How's that magic looking this morning?
The Magic's looking great, and Chris Long attributed Foles getting up last week from that hit against the Texans to the Shrine. Well, maybe the Shrine saved Nick Foles from some broken ribs, because I am told, and Ian Rappaport, together we are told via sources, that tests today on Nick Foles confirmed what everyone believed last night, that he did not suffer any broken ribs, that he only has bruised ribs. I say only. That's still a relatively painful deal and knocked him out of that game. But the expectation is that he will be ready to go for this weekend's playoff game against the Chicago Bears. I am told that is the plan. As a matter of fact, about a half an hour ago or so, Foles walked into this building. Someone who saw him told me that somebody else asked him, how you doing? And he tapped on his chest and he said, I'm good. So relatively good news for Nick Foles and the Eagles, as they expected, here on this Monday morning.
St. Nick moves on to Chicago. By the way, there's a Khalil Mack photo over there because the Eagles needed the Bears' help this week. I wonder what happens to that Khalil Mack 52 photo I'm looking at over here. We'll have to discuss that later this week. Garafolo, we appreciate you. We'll talk to you in a little bit and all day on NFL Network, all week, really leading to that wild card weekend matchup on Sunday afternoon in the Windy City. Guys, Nick Foles, do you think that they had that game locked up, right, when he left? Bruised ribs, super painful injury. He could have come back if they were in a bad spot, right?
Yeah.
You sort of get that vibe.
You did last week, the week before, when he took the Clowney hit. You know?
Yeah, he took the Clowney hit. It's funny with Foles because we're talking about all these coaching hires, all these vacancies. Do you know who the #1 name is going to be on the free agent block this offseason? Do you know who's going to be the guy?
Talk about it.
So that's another aspect to this. Like, if you're a Denver or Miami head coach coming in, or do you think, okay, well, maybe I get Nick Foles? Because I'll tell you what, I said it earlier in the show, Kane, if the audience is just watching, I mean this. This is not hyperbole. This is not me being exaggerating. With the exception of maybe Brady and Mahomes and Breeze, like, I don't know if there's another quarterback in the NFL I would want right now in these big games than Nick Foles. He is so dialed in, so locked in, and he has his team playing so well and believing in him that it's very hard for me, whether they're home or whether they're away, to pick against the Eagles in any game moving forward, including this awesome Bears defense.
It's going to take a lot more than a rib to bring down the legacy of Nick Foles. He's plugged into something special. Let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, Adam had a little issue with his rib in the Garden of Eden, okay? No big deal. Nick Foles will show up in Chicago, and it's going to be the game of the year.
You've taken it too far.
Adam's rib, baby.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at Nick Foles, and Strays, I'm right there with you. This is the closer. This is the guy who plays big in big moments.
Nate, can I interrupt you? You said a few weeks ago, you said if they get into the playoffs with Nick Foles is going to go and win the Super Bowl. And you were kind of funny, kind of talking from the hip. How do you feel now? Because you said it right here.
Yeah, a lot of truth is said in jest. And I still believe, like right now, that Nick Foles is as scary as any other quarterback. Yeah, throw Drew Brees at me, Goff, Brady, Mahomes. You better throw Nick Foles in that conversation as well. And then, just like you said, who cares about the regular season? We are ripping up everything you thought about your squads. It's the playoffs now. And guess what?
But they lost to Dallas.
The dude who's good in the playoffs is the dude who won it last year. Nick Foles, the Super Bowl MVP, Nick Foles.
It'll be a wild card weekend, that is for sure. We've got you covered here on Good Morning Football. Up next, Coaching changes everywhere. Marvin Lewis out after 16 years in Cincinnati. We've got reporters all across the league giving you inside information. Schrags is on top of it here on CNBC.
The rap sheet in Rappaport, man, it's been wild today. A lot of moves being made, coaches being fired. What's the latest?
Let's give a rundown for what has already happened this morning. Already some big shakeups in the coaching world. Start with Marvin Lewis, more than a decade with the Cincinnati Bengals, a tenure that seemed like it would never end, has in fact ended. Marvin Lewis, just a couple minutes ago, told some of his coaches that he is officially out as the Bengals coach, not retiring. He wants to coach again, from my understanding, but he is not going to be the head coach of the Bengals. Finally, they are going in a new direction after a year where they went all in. Here's another head coaching move that was, let's say, a big surprise. Adam Gase officially out in Miami, fired as the coach after just 3 seasons. Started with a playoff appearance, obviously had a lot of uncertainty at the quarterback position. Even starting Jay Cutler last year obviously did not work out well. Struggled again this year with Ryan Tannehill in and out of the lineup. Gase is now out, expected to be one of the top head coaching candidates in the league. Speaking of fired, Vance Joseph, another one, now officially fired. John Elway just releasing a statement confirming this news after 2 seasons, really with strong defense, not a lot of offense, and very little quarterback play. Vance Joseph officially out of work, and do not be surprised if he ends up back on the radar of the Cincinnati Bengals, a place he has worked. And the only one we are still waiting on, Steve Wilks with the Arizona Cardinals. He informed his staff that he expects to be fired. Has not yet met with Michael Bidwell, but this information is pretty good. My understanding is it is accurate. Wilks is expected to be gone, just has not received the final word on it happening yet.
Appreciate it, Ian. Thank you so much, man. We'll check back in with you later. We're pretty sure that there's going to be more moves made today.
You know, one thing I wanted to mention here, you know, we're seeing a lot of these moves. Vance Joseph, Steve Wilks, Todd Bowles today, Marvin Lewis. We now, and this has been a league initiative to keep it as diverse, but we now have Mike Tomlin, Anthony Lynn, and there's 2 out of 32 NFL head coaches are African American. And Chris Greer is a GM down there in Miami. We'll see what his future lies. Other than that, I'm trying to think. Reggie McKenzie just was let go, and it is something worth talking because the league has put such an initiative on making sure minority candidates have an opportunity to get these jobs. And there's the Rooney Rule, and there's a lot of things going on. But right now, the league is at a real tipping point when you have Mike Tomlin and Anthony Lynn as 2 African-American coaches that are right now currently employed. It has not been this way in decades. And I'm fascinated to see how the interview process goes and that we make sure that this thing is given a fair shot to everybody, because this is a step backwards. And did any of those coaches deserve to keep their jobs? Maybe we could talk about all that. Sure. Yeah. But this is something that the league has to make sure is a league initiative and continues to forward with progress.
Yeah, last night I was sitting at home and they were talking about the potential coach firings. And I'm watching the TV screen with my wife, and I said, oh, there's 3 coaches right there, 3 African-American coaches that might not have their job. And you run down the list today of the coaches that we don't have. Marvin Lewis, like you said, 16 years. Steve Wilks, just 1 year. The lease wasn't that long. Vance Joseph, 2 years. Todd Bowles, 4. And we were talking to him in the commercial break. We both walked to the bathroom, and I said, well, the interviews are going to happen, and we'll see if there's candidates that are African-American that will be hired, are candidates of color. But here's the thing. As a player, as an African-American player, I don't see color. This is what I identify with. Energy, intelligence, and if you're a former player, as a coach. Now, as a young African-American man, forget being a football player. I do see color because I see a player, a coach that looks like me. I see a coach that was in the same circumstances as me. When you separate an African-American coach or an ethnic candidate from just pure football intelligence, football IQ has no color. But as a black player, I would love to see coaches of color have more time. And that's where this becomes a little bit sticky for me, because you look at a guy like Steve Wilks. 1 year, everything that was going on, rookie head coach, rookie D coordinator, rookie offensive coordinator, rookie quarterback. Your running back was getting focused on all year, so he was getting shut down. Did he really have a fair shot at keeping his job? This isn't a shot to the organization, because we can all be objective and say he just wasn't the man for the job. But I would like to see coaches have more time. And I would be saying this if it was a white coach. I just don't like seeing coaches getting fired 1 year. And if he's African-American, of course, I'm going to identify with that a little bit more, because I want to see more African-Americans have a fair shot at keeping their jobs. Because I do feel like Marvin Lewis was a little bit of an outlier. He lasted a lot longer than expected, white or black. But yeah, moving forward, we'll see what hirings happen and what
And if
what
you're not
happens.
familiar with the Rooney Rule, is you're required to interview at least one minority candidate before you make your hire. And now there's been rules in the NFL where the front office has something similar to that. Jerry Reese, formerly of the Giants, is rumored to have interviewed with the Raiders job before they gave it to Mike Mayock. It's just something that the league has always had as such an initiative, and it's such a visible thing. When you look at the coaches in that coaching photo, if it's 32 white faces, that is not something the league wants. They want to represent the players as well.
In the league that's majority black.
Of course.
Right.
It's a really interesting thing that individually in silos, the teams might say, okay, I'm looking for the best coach, but we just as a league need to make sure that everyone is brought in and that everyone has a fair opportunity for those jobs.
That's the best candidate.
I'm just following up with Nate. Particularly in the case of Steve Wilkes, are you concerned that race had something to do with the firing, or it would have gone differently?
No, I wouldn't say that, because when you look at the record speaks for itself. I'm just saying, if I'm looking at him, if it was a white coach, I would say, why didn't they give him more time? He's a black coach, so I identify with a black man holding a position of power in the NFL. Because with the league being 75% plus African American, I would love to see more African Americans in position of power, whether it's head coaches, GMs, even owning teams. That's just not the case. There's more time for that to happen, but in the meantime, coaches are getting fired for having less time.
Well said, Nate. And one and done doesn't happen very often. Chip Kelly, the last one to suffer that fate a couple of years ago. I'm looking at some of these candidates now, though. Schrags, like, it's not like those guys are out of the league and now won't get shuffled back
Vince
into
Joseph
the
will be
mix.
interviewed. Jim Caldwell.
They could still be in that.
All those
that
guys. And then
picture.
Chris Richard, Eric Bieniemy. There's
go.
a lot of great names coming up.
Right.
For sure.
I just say, when it's all said and done, when we have that team coaches photo, 32 faces, I'd like to see some diversity in there.
Love hearing that. Well said all around. Let's look at the playoff picture. We know some coaching stuff's going on, but we're excited about this. The Saints and the Rams get to rest it up. The Eagles going to Chicago, taking on those Bears at Soldier Field. We heard from Mike Garafolo that Nick Foles has nothing broken, some bruised ribs, so he should be okay. And the Seahawks have to go to Arlington and face Dak Prescott, the game-winning drive leader.